Welcome to Gabriel Music Notation. I'm your host, William Tapley, the creator of Gabriel Music Notation, which is a new way to tackle one of music's oldest problems, the confusing visual language of our current, but by now, archaic music notation system. Although I created Gabriel Music Notation 50 years ago, it has been extremely slow to catch on. In fact, it's been slower than slow. Progress has been non-existent. If I believed in conspiracy theories, I would say it's really strange. For example, all of my recent magazine article submissions, 3 or 4 by now, have been turned down. At least I presume they were turned down. The editors of those magazines, which I will charitably not refer to by name, have not even bothered to respond with letters of rejection. I'm beginning to realize that people in the music world are not only not very perceptive, but also downright rude. However, I've never let disappointment stop me in the past, and I'm not going to start now. History will prove my detractors were not only wrong, but short-sighted, to say the least. I will continue to reveal the great advantages of my music notation system. Why? Because I owe it to future generations of musicians. Every musician, for 1,000 years, have known that the first scale he or she is taught, C major, which represents the white keys on a keyboard instrument, is relatively easy to learn. So why does that student, in subsequent lessons, need to learn 15 different scales just because 5 accidentals were added to that one easy major scale of 7 notes? On this program, I will demonstrate, once again, to all the rude musicians, as well as to open-minded musicians, if there are any left, that is, with Gabriel Music Notation, you need to learn only one 12-tone chromatic scale to play all 15 musical scales. Plus, you no longer need to memorize sharps, flats, double sharps, double flats, or even key signatures to read any and all music. Of course, my system may have been rejected because it appears too good to be true. So, to understand my innovative arrangement, let's begin with the new 12-tone chromatic scale that incorporates all 5 black keys of a keyboard plus all 7 white keys. See figure 1 at the bottom. Notice how the 12 notes form a visually straight line up and down the staff, just like the tones sound to human ears. By contrast, successive notes on our current musical staff, see figure 1 at the top, sometimes rise a semitone, or sometimes they stay in the same location. If they stay on the same line, as with D sharp and D, or on the same space, as with A sharp and A, it's because there are no provisions for black keys. But instead, some accidental sign must be inserted to indicate the black key above the white key or the black key below the white key. Why not just incorporate a unique black key position on the staff, as I did with my Gabriel system? That's how keyboard design works. It eliminates the need for learning up to 15 different scales. However, previous attempts at notation reform have failed because similar 12-tone chromatic scales, which solve the problem by adding more lines and spaces, for the black keys require 70% more staff height than the standard C major scale. More notes require more spacing. So how can that superfluous extra space problem be resolved? My great eureka moment came 50 years ago when I realized the problem can easily be overcome if succeeding notes in a 12-tone chromatic scale are separated by a smaller 1/3 note head interval rather than the current 1/2 note head interval. See figure 2. In this example, the 1/3 vertical note separation is inherent in the design, just as in keyboard design. Please notice, with Gabriel notation, the black key, A sharp, takes its design cue from black angular-shaped keyboard keys. Notice also the smaller interval allows all 12 chromatic semitones to rise and fall in a straight line, as we saw in figure 1. In current notation, any line and its 2 adjacent spaces above and below the line register 3 notes of the C major scale. By contrast, in Gabriel notation, since succeeding notes rise and fall at 1/3 note head intervals, each line of the Gabriel staff registers 4 notes in place of those 3 notes. Thus, the new, compacted, 12-tone chromatic scale takes up very little more vertical staff height than our clumsy current system. 12 compacted Gabriel notes register in the same vertical staff height as 8 notes in the standard system. This new arrangement overcomes the #1 objection to all other chromatic notation proposals. They take up too much space. At this point, I would like to read Gardner Reed's criticism of my system as he reported in his book, Source Book of Proposed Notation Reforms. First, he lets me describe my plan. And here I am quoting myself. My Gabriel system is a chromatic notation with all the advantages of such a system. The most notable advance I have made is to condense the successive notes in the chromatic scale so that each is separated by a 1/3 note head step rather than the usual 1/2 step. This overcomes the only problem of all the other chromatic proposals that I have seen. Namely, their staffs require 70% greater height to accommodate 12 notes instead of the current 7. Gardner Reed then states his main criticism. Tapley's assertion is not borne out when one compares the staff heights of the preceding proposals with his own. Few of the earlier designs require up to 70% more vertical space than Tapley's staff. Sorry, Gardner Reed, but you are mistaken. Any 12-tone chromatic scale that utilizes standard half-step intervals must use 70% more staff height than a 7-tone scale. 70% of 7 is 5, and when you add 5 lines to 7 lines, you get 12 lines, which forces the creators of those systems to eliminate some lines or turn others into dotted, dashed, or colored lines. The majority of notation proposals in Reed's book are chromatic in form and use half-step intervals, as well as variegated designs. I wonder if Reed read his own book, because he admits as much on page 10, and I quote, "In their zeal to transcend the limitations and incongruities of the traditional pentagram Now, by pentagram, he means the 5-line staff. The inventors of unorthodox staff forms quite generally succeeded only in substituting new reading problems for old difficulties. Though most of the reforms managed to overcome the requirement for accidental signs, as does Gabriel, by the way, they either gave the eye a markedly wider area to encompass. By markedly wider, Gardner-Reed means a staff height that is 70% greater. And he adds, or conversely, an excessively narrow field of vision in which to comprehend minute pitch distinctions. Gabriel overcomes that particular problem by means of contrasting, shaped, and colored notes for the black keys. And Gardner-Reed continues, few, if any, of the novel systems focused on the main issue, the creation of another staff, as simple in design as the conventional pentagram, again 5-line staff, and as logical in its representation of pitch, duration, intensity, and quality of sound. I think if Gardner-Reed were alive today, he would come to realize that Gabriel Music Notation fulfills his goal. Then again, maybe not. That recognition on his part would not be a sure thing. I started this program pointing out the many difficulties I have experienced in convincing the world of music as to the tremendous advantages of my new notation system. Yes, it's been very frustrating. But then I realized I can't give up. The original inventor of music notation, Guido d'Arezzo, faced the same kind of obstacles. Europe did not accept his discoveries, especially Northern Europe. It wasn't until Guido went to the Pope and convinced him of its efficacy that music notation was eventually adopted, even by his many skeptics. Today, I need to find the equivalent of someone in authority like a pope who has an open mind. If anyone watching this video has any suggestions, let me know. Write them in the comments below. In the meantime, wish me luck. Now, this concludes part 1 of a multi-part series on Gabriel Music Notation. If you are interested in contacting me, you may also write to me at William Tapley, Post Office Box 291, Osage, Iowa 50461. Incidentally, the shirt I am wearing is a Mayflower shirt. And on the back are listed the names of all the pilgrims who came over on the Mayflower. And it so happens I am a direct descendant of 4 of those hardy souls, the White family. Maybe their success against naysayers will inspire me to succeed as well. And I hope to see all of you again at future parts of this presentation. And please, in the meantime, don't listen to the naysayers.